Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. And today we have another great episode in our CIO series with Maximo Bredfeldt, the CIO of Longship. Maximo, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me here.
My pleasure. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and a hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker has successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Maximo, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Longship and your role there as CIO?
Sure. So Longship, we are a third-party logistics company. So we're primarily a broker. We don't own any trucks. What we do is we are the Uber for freight in a way. If you need to move any kind of freight, our agents, our brokers will find a carrier to move that freight from A to B, and we ensure that gets delivered properly and timely. My role is I came in here at a great time, in my view. This worked out beautifully, I think, for all parties involved. Our company is relatively young and has enjoyed tremendous success. So this is a good example, I think, of a company that has gone through the growing pains and is going through the growing pains, stopping being and thinking as a small business and projecting to be bigger and better. So they brought me in to help them on that next step. It's like, what do we need to do to ensure that, hey, we're great at what we do. How do we make this bigger? How do we scale? And yeah, I'm super excited that I get this chance to come here and give it a shot at what I think I'm good at doing.
I love it. Well, I mean, I think that is such an important topic when it comes to any business and IT in particular, because you're always hearing about scaling, when it comes to, say, a SaaS product. Great. That makes sense. How do you go from those, few beta testers and now you've gone to market and you now have, thousands and then millions of users. So the idea of scaling, in the IT world, I think people immediately go to something like that in the modern day. But as IT applies to business, this is, I think, where the rubber meets the road. And it's so critical to get this piece right. Because if your IT is not right, if your business processes aren't right, and IT is a part of that, then all you're doing is scaling headaches. You're just increasing your headaches and the inefficiencies. So you got to get all of this ironed out. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on, and maybe not necessarily the particulars of exactly where you are, but I think things that can help every company in that kind of scaling process of how they go from that small business, to as you so put it, which I think was great, was stop thinking like a small business and take that next step, how you go about that. So if you could, let's explore that for a little bit, your ideas and thoughts on how a business can best do that.
Sure. It's a super interesting question, and I would dare to say there is no silver bullet to go about this. And it starts, I believe, because every business is very unique. I see businesses no different than people. It's like, you have 10 hospitals and they all treat sick people, but the more granular you get in how they operate and how they do what they do is when you start seeing those differences. So I don't think it would be fair to say, hey, your company's ready. Like if you're in this business or this vertical, this is when you need to do these and these changes to ensure a smooth transition, because there's just an immeasurable amount of factors involved in making that decision. And I don't know if I was blessed or cursed, because I lived through this several times actually, in when it comes to being part of a company that is going through those growing pains. Um, so uh, planning for scale is something that I've seen a lot of people or a lot of companies do right, and a lot of them do wrong. And if I can share one of the stories,
Please.
in my first big boy job was in Germany, a company that's very dear to me. That's what formed me as a professional, was when I first started getting in touch from, hey, I'm doing a thing, in and thinking, hey, my thing that I do has a bigger impact, and that's a marketable fit and skill, and we can do more than just build computers, right? So that was my job, like my first job in Germany, where I got paid for being an quote unquote IT professional. Was building computers in a shed and not getting paid a lot of money. So I, I I think I'm very lucky that I lived through that transition where deploying Novell networks over deploying the first servers, and literally seeing it grow and being a part of it, and seeing how all these companies, like the first time that I put a computer at a Metzger, a slaughterhouse, right? It's like in so recognizing when do you need to make which change for which company. It's interesting, and it's interesting. It has been very interesting for me to see how different companies go about it. Um, and yeah, it takes a lot of courage, I think, for an organization to take those steps. And some of them have better timing than others, and some of them fail at very obvious things, and some others fail at very difficult things. So yeah, I have a lot of
Well,
thoughts about that. Where do you want to go from here?
I think it's really interesting because, one, I think we both kind of grew up early on in tech to see that where, yeah, building computers back in the day, there was no, at the early days there was some money in it, and then there was no money in it, as the Dells and the Hewlett Packards came in, and the money went away because they started selling the real estate on the desktop to software companies, so there's no money in hardware anymore.
Right.
Anyway, but that's just a fun, old IT guy talk about, the old days. But I think specifically going back to how you have seen things differently kind of from that
Mm-hmm.
consultant role, I think that brings so much value to IT, instead of, and not that there's anything wrong with being very specialized in an industry in technology or in any other way, but I think there's so much value in being able to come at a problem and something differently, and seeing all these different companies that tried, different things different ways. Some things work, some things didn't, and be able to realize that they're all different. Like, as you said, they're like, just like people, no two are the same, no businesses are the same, but just like with people, you can do certain things to be successful in a certain area, certain, whatever it is, career path, you name it, in whatever way. And so there are those things that you can do that will make, that will tend to help you be more successful than not. And so in that, as you guys look to scale, going back to that, taking some of your lessons learned, what is it that you're most excited about in this scaling? Is it getting, is it implementing, is it AI? Is you're right? That'll be a fun topic. It comes up every time now. And maybe it's partially my fault, as I'm the first one to say it. So definitely my fault. But is it, what are those things that you're excited about, with your current job, and the kind of streamlining that you're looking to do here, and for
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm excited about a whole bunch of stuff. The first thing that got me really excited about this job, is something that was super poetic. really, and I want to share this story because it made me cry genuinely.
Nice.
And this was because I moved to the US in 2013. So I've been here a little bit over a decade.
Wait, was it for a girl?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
it
always
was.
for a girl or a guy. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Say it's good.
no, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It was a girl. So yeah, I'm back then I was very crazy and very in love, and
That's
I got
great.
lost and landed here in Lexington, Kentucky, still married to that same girl.
Very cool.
um but to go back to your question, what got me excited? The company that I work for today was one of the first clients that I had at my first job here in the United States. And about 12 years ago, they were a couple of dudes in a double wide uh, container trying to sell some freight. Um, so our owner, Kenny Shomp, he's like multi-generational, like truck and logistics guru, and he wanted to do something on his own. So he started this company, and uh, I it was my first deal here. Like I think it was a server that I sold him, a small server. That I went on a loss. Like I genuinely like they were trying to get set up and they needed a bunch of stuff. And my point of contact back then was a really tough negotiator, and and I helped them out. And these are the guys that called me a couple months ago and asked me where I was doing, where I was, and what I was doing, and if I would be interested in helping them in this next step. So number one, I'm super excited to see that. It's like, hey, I know these guys. They're kind of my baby in a way.
Yep.
um, so that has me super excited. The other thing that has me very excited is I try to be very mindful when I interview for a job. For the past decade or so, I've been trying to be mindful. Like, what's my goal? What do I want from this job? Because it's not just money. Is what am I going to learn? Um, so whenever I interview, I make sure that I ask the questions: is this job going to be right for me? And the reality is, you never know. But if you ask the right questions, that can give you a better idea,
Mhm.
right? So one of the questions that I asked was like, "Are you going to let me build a dream team? Are you going to let me build a team that I want to build a team where people are going to be proud to work here?" And the answer was yes. So that's the second thing that I'm super excited about. Um, and the third thing that I think the most excited about is that I get to put into practice all that I've learned my entire career. And it's both terrifying, man, but it feels great. It really feels good. And I've had, uh, in the last couple of years, I've genuinely seen like all the cards falling into place, and like the Mr. Miyagi moments that I've had in my career and all the oh shit moments that I've had in my career, how all that has prepared me to confidently step into this role. And uh, that when we were talking earlier, that if I want to push a message, it's going to be confidence. I would really like to use some time today to talk about that.
Well, there's a number of things I'd love to touch on, with what you said, and then I want to get into confidence too, because I think that's such an important topic. But going back to what you said, this is Longship was kind of your first, basically, if you will, your first client with your first job here in the States. And I think the takeaway there that means so many things had to fall into place for that to
Yeah.
happen. One, it means that you did a really great job with everything that you did when you were helping them. And I think a lot of companies, and a lot of techs working for a company, they don't necessarily they don't really consider that all the time when they're working on it. Not in a selfish way of like, what could this be, but putting it, giving the maximum effort and doing a great job, and you see how that pays off. And I think all too often people miss that as they're going, especially in today's day and age. And I love that you're focusing your job on, is it right for you? I think a lot of people treat a job like a job instead of, we have a mission and we're going to do this mission. I'm going to be here 8 hours, or whatever it is a day, but I want it to have meaning, right? I want it. And, I think that's really easy. Like for us, we're saving companies, we're saving US businesses from online threats and enemies who are literally coming after them. That's an easy mission to get behind. You could just as easily take that as, we're a bunch of geeks, we do geeky stuff all day, I like geeky stuff. You could do that. And then people just kind of like, they're just doing their job instead of they have this really cool mission. Okay, cool. But I think when you do stuff like that, where you're taking care of that individual to such a degree that now, fast forward, what's it been, 10, 14 years, and now they're giving you, now you're the CIO of that company that was just a startup when you start. That's fantastic for it to come. You not only did you take care of them, but you obviously earned their trust throughout the years while you were taking care of them, went on and did other great stuff. I think that's such a great takeaway for everybody. And I think everybody who gets to, a certain level in their IT career sees that, but maybe not the young kids, coming in. I don't think that's an obvious takeaway for a lot of people.
No, it's not. And honestly, I think our environment is so weird, right? Because um, it's so hard to be confident in an environment where failure is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Um, truly, and I get it. Everybody can say the same about their jobs at some point in time. This is unacceptable. But I think the difference is like when we're talking, like me, a kid in my career, I cannot remember how many times I was absolutely terrified because you were about to connect a thing or click on a thing and you had no idea if that was going to work or not. So good freaking luck. So when people have that much, they put so much hope on you and so much trust in you, and most of the time you have no idea what you're dealing with, and so it's
A lot
easy
of times
to
it's the first time you've done it. It can work, but it's
absolutely,
the first
yeah,
time you're doing it. So
right. And so my career, I was plagued by, I was terrified of failure, man. And a lot of times I saw myself as very confident, but in reality I was just horribly terrified about everything, and the anxiety uh, that we in our industry we go through is tremendous, and I don't think a lot of people spend 2 minutes to think about that. So going back to the topic of confidence, it's so hard to gain confidence when everything is against you, everything is stacked against you, time is against you, money is against you. And for as much as we want to, you know, say we're being proactive, blah blah, all we do is reactive. 99% of what we do is trying to predict what's going to happen, and it's never what you think it's going to be. It's always something else, right? So um, it has been super difficult. So when going back to this story, it's like so poetic because I was at a really low point in my career, honestly, because I didn't know where to go next. I really didn't know. Like I wanted to do something like this, but like I said, seeing it fall back into place and going back to something that I helped create at some point, and that just like you said, where they valued a lot of the things that I stood for, that I've stood by my entire life, is doing the right thing, being accountable, making mistakes and owning them, and just remember that whatever you do, it's gonna come back to you, and hopefully, it's gonna be a good thing.
Well, I love that, and that is perhaps the most poetic IT story I've heard. It's really fantastic how that has come full circle, and I think that speaks volumes of you and your character, and the quality of the work that you did. Now, but let's make this really practical. You talk about
Mhm.
kind of owning your mistakes. So, let's just say we're talking to a young IT professional who's listening, and there is this pressure to be perfect, and I think that culturally you're taught from a very young age going through school that you're to be perfect, right? That you were given the information, you're tested on that information. There's perfect scores and then less than perfect. And so everybody's always trying to get that perfect score. And in today's day and age, with the expectations, I think, are much higher that people are, flawless, because you're used to things being more flawless and working. You rewind 40 years ago, and the world was a mess. Nothing worked quickly. I mean, you couldn't send a message. It took you, forever to get a message across to
Right.
somebody. And now everything's instant and it's perfect and it's flawless thanks to computers. Thank you. Right. But so that has created this expectation of perfection, and then how do you deal with the human aspect of human beings make mistakes, right? And giving people that space to try, and even though they're trying their best, when they make mistake, being like, that's okay, you gave it your all. How do you create that space, or get that message across to somebody that it's okay? You don't have to be as terrified as you and I were every time we went to do something and something went wrong, and but there is a bit of that fear. I mean, that it is a healthy fear that you want things to be good. But how do you get that message across that it's okay and it's not the end of the world and you're not a horrible person just because you made a mistake?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have to share this story because this is a lesson that I learned that I'm super thankful for. And I owe this lesson to Stephen Jones, which is my former boss, fantastic professional and great human being. And I couldn't be more thankful to having had the opportunity to work with this guy. So let me tell you how I learned this lesson about how to fail. So we were in an incident response situation. I was operating as a CISO for as a VCISO for one of our clients, and this was a textbook oh shit moment. And we were about to jump into the very first client facing meeting where we have to unpack. It's like, hey, this is what's going on, and this is where we're at. These are our next steps. And of course, like it's a super, super tense moment where you have to tell someone, hey, there's someone actively hacking your stuff. And it's a terrifying moment. It's super tense, a lot of emotions going wild. And so I'm prepping, I'm role playing with my boss. And uh, and I said, hey, I want to take one of the engineers and one of the analysts, and I want them to do this and this and that. And he tells me, yeah, take this one guy. I said, hell no. Like I'm not taking that guy. He's too hot headed. He's too, like he's a good kid and he has his head in the right place. But this too tense. Like I don't want to do that. And he's like, no, trust me. I want you to, And I was upset. I was really upset because, but I trusted him. I said, okay, I'll do that. And so the meeting starts and we start talking, and it so happened that there were people in the room that knew their stuff, from the other side, from the client side. And this analyst put his both of his feet in his mouth, not once but twice. It got really ugly really quick. And I was like, I'm the kind of guy I like being on camera because I think there's so many layers to human communication that get lost if you don't have this, right? So I'm trying really hard to poker face through this. I'm messaging my teammate, hey, chill it, don't do this, let me take over, because it's going from bad to worse. So this is me, right, in the middle of like super heated meeting and super upset, trying to keep my cool, because you want to present a professional approach to this. So I'm trying to tell uh, my analyst to don't mess it up anymore. And I'm texting my boss angry, see, I told you this, this was a bad idea and you should have listened to me. And he asked me, do you have this? Do you need me? So no, I got this. And we went through the rest of the meeting and, we fixed it, and happy ending to that story. Right? So then I go to the debriefing to my boss, to Jones, and I'm still really upset. I'm half Italian. I'm a very emotional person. So, but I try to be patient, and so I'm like, what the heck were you thinking, man? And so he told me, it's like, yeah, you were right. I knew that this was a bad idea to put him in there. But if I don't give him the opportunity to fail, he's not going to learn. And I was like, holy hell. It's like, dang, that hit me hard. And it hits me hard every time that I think about that. Um, because it takes courage to do that. We risk losing the client, and it was a very expensive lesson, but I know that he learned it. I learned it, and probably, hopefully, someone listen to this is gonna listen to that and go like, "Oh wow," So that's one of the best examples of good leadership that I've come across in my career, and a very inspiring moment for other people, because that's one of the things that always stopped me, is like letting go of the responsibility and giving someone, like granting someone the opportunity to mess up and encouraging them mess up. Um, if it's not life and death, we're going to fix it. We're engineers. That's what we do. So that's a beautiful story, and man, very inspiring. So there you go. That's a good example on how you can build. Do so many birds got shot with that one stone, with that one stone. Um, yeah, there you
That's
go.
fantastic. Well, let me ask you for the analyst, the hot-headed analyst, um, because I think this is a really interesting story from your perspective, from your boss's perspective. I'm curious how that story what the analyst, the hot-headed analyst, I'm curious what the story is to them and their takeaway. Do you happen to know?
I don't know, but man, I wish he gets to tell his side of the story, because honestly, uh, it that has been super interesting to me, the difference between experience and wisdom. Um, and wisdom always comes after the experience, right? And
Yep.
sometimes years. It has. While I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in this podcast with you today, I started reminiscing about so many of these stories, and how many times in the moment I was so blinded by emotion, either good or bad, or a mix of thereof, that I didn't take the time to learn my lesson. And thinking about them, sometimes years later, you're like, holy crap, that was it. That's what I should have learned back then, and I didn't. But now that I saw that in a different way, or in a different light, or I heard a similar story, I can relate to that. So he probably hated that moment, and he probably will. He probably, if he's listening to this, he's gonna know who he was, And dude, like, keep up. You probably hate me right now for like putting you on the spot. Only you and I know who you are, and well, the people that were in that room.
Maybe we'll have him on the show.
But
He's more than welcome
yeah,
to come on,
oh,
tell his side
that
of the
that
story.
would be awesome. Yeah,
That
that
would be
would be
great. I would
awesome.
love that.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of times it's like timing, right? If you don't have the maturity to learn that lesson, that doesn't mean that you're never going to learn it. It
That's
can
right.
come back to you later. So be patient.
Oh, I'm a big believer that this whole world is kind of a big classroom.
Mm,
If you don't learn the lesson and pass that test, you're going to keep getting that test. It's going to keep coming back. I don't care if it's like, why do I only date, like the wrong people? It's
yeah,
because you haven't learned the lesson. Why does
yeah,
this keep happening? It's because you haven't learned the lesson. Like, take a
yeah.
moment, learn it. You keep doing the same stuff. You're going to keep getting the same results. And even if you try something different, if you're not really learning the lesson, you haven't figured it out yet. 2 + 2 = 4. You keep writing three, you're gonna keep
Right.
getting asked what 2 + 2 is. It's just that simple. And so I love that, that kind of, introspection and review to say, hey, what are the takeaways here? What are the lessons to be learned here? And that one's, that's a great example of, like you said, good leadership and a great way to show people that it's okay to mess up, right? And
Yeah.
I think that takes a lot of confidence in the team, the business, the process, that you know what, it's going to be okay. Even if we didn't do the, because he could have been focusing on the client and said, no, you can't take the hot head in. We need cooler heads to prevail here. Why don't you go with so and so, or you just take it yourself? And I think that is probably what most people would have done in that situation. You're looking for the best possible outcome, not always looking for a teachable moment. And so I think that was, especially in a high stakes, high pressure situation, to throw somebody in there. I mean, you really are now at this point looking to kind of mentor and grow that more junior analyst there, so that they can get that experience. Yep. Sometimes it's trial by fire. And I think that's just,
Absolutely.
great leadership, knowing that, maybe he knew he had a really great relationship with the client, and it's going to be okay. And they'll see that this is a junior guy, and it'll be fine. Right. So maybe he knew that. I don't know. I thinking from my position, that's probably it. I probably feel very
Yeah.
comfortable with you. Like, you're going to handle it, and he's going to step on it. You'll clean it up. It'll be fine. And the client will be, and that's probably my perspective. And it's a teachable moment for the younger one, and they'll grow and learn from it. But all that to say, I don't think that's the usual for most people. I don't think
No, it's
most managers and leaders would do that.
no, it's not. And that's my whole point that I want to make, that it's so challenging to be confident. When again, like, think about the world that we live in, right? It's ones and zeros. We're not into quantum computing yet. So it works or it freaking doesn't. That is it. And how many of you engineers that are listening to this, when you have had it, so many of those Hail Mary moments that you like, oh shit, like, ask the guy at CrowdStrike, right? Like, when you push that button and everything either goes to hell, or you get glory. And that pivotal chaotic moment of, like, you do this one thing and you're gonna get glory or not. And honestly, let's be completely real and honest. For us, like, geeks and engineers, these muggles have no idea the magic that we pull off every day in and every day, right? And sometimes I struggle with my wife, like, because I'm super geeky and techie, and I do all sorts of, like, weird stuff around the house. It talks to you and robots here and there, and it's so wild to me when I fail to convey the level of effort that took me to make that one little light, do the one thing that I wanted to do. Like, the regular person looks at it as like, what's the big deal, right? Because that's the terrifying thing in the big picture. And I don't want to get too philosophical, but we live in a world where we're so disconnected to reality, where you don't think of the intricacies of what happens when you go home and you flick the light switch, right? It just happens. Light is there, and you're warm and cozy in your home, but you don't spend 2 seconds to think about the incredibly complex infrastructure that supports all of this, right? So
Mhm.
now think of the guy that's pushing the button.
Yep.
And it's a guy that, let's face it, most of us are introverts. Well, most of us are shy, but you have the weight of the world sometimes on your shoulders, and you're it.
Yep.
Right. So, yeah, it has been so terrifying in my life, feeling all that pressure that people put on you, and yeah, you're left to your own devices sometimes, and good luck finding confidence, because guess what? You fixed it. Now you're just at status quo. It's like, that's what we expect to happen, right? So why do you deserve praise?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So it's so unthankful. It's like, if everything works, why do I need you? And if
Yep.
nothing works, why do I need you? So if you succeed, you're not going to win. And if you win, you're potentially not going to win either. So how do
Yeah.
you drive confidence from that, right?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think it comes down to the communication of it, that the because that whole idea that it's if it's not broke, why do we need you? Obviously, you spend enough time at in IT companies and IT in general. That's the idea. Like it just works. So like, why do we need so many IT people? Why do we like, are you not happy that it's working perfectly and everything's running smoothly? The number of fires that get put out, the things that get fixed that don't affect everybody, and yet the whole system keeps on running. That is why you need all those people, and that is, that's the heroic effort they've done to allow this to happen. And so communicating that is often a real challenge, I think, for the IT side to kind of properly communicate that to, whether it's to the C-suite, to the end users. I think that idea, it's hard for people to grasp. It's like, oh yeah, just like you said, it's easy to take electricity, the internet, your computer, your email, your everything for granted. That like, oh, it just works. You just take it for granted, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. And then when it doesn't, oh, what the heck? I can't do my job. IT, what's wrong? You right? And it's like, okay, but let's put it in perspective. 20 years ago, you're doing more in 1 hour than you did all day 20 years ago, thanks to all of this magic that we're able to conjure for your benefit. And so there is a bit of that communication that has to go on, and it needs to come from also, I think, IT leadership, but also the rest of the leadership team needs to have that appreciation for. And I love that you use magic, because I think that's so smart. The magic of IT, all the conjuring that we do all day that makes it all work. Because without it, to anybody else, to the muggles, it does seem like magic. Like, how this is just, it's a box, and it's this, and yet now it magically comes to life and does these incredible things. And so I think that is an important message to be conveying to people, the magic. And I love that you've tied that in, because it is so magical, right? It's magical in that it works at all, and that it's magical in what it does. And it's magical in the fact that we, as IT professionals, put together the right solutions, and keep it all going, and also protect it from the bad guys coming out. Incredible. That this is incredible. It's an
Absolutely.
incredible
Yeah.
effort done by this profession. And people have to
Yeah.
see that. They
No,
have to
people have to see
hear it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people should appreciate that. And this, I want to bring a little quote from, I'm not sure if it's original from him. It's a guy named James Burke. He's a historian, and he has a fantastic show from the 70s called Connections. And I remember the little bit that he in the first episode, he says a sentence. Um, this is in the 70s, right? But he said, never have so many people understood so little about so much.
Yeah.
And it every day it gets truer and truer.
Yep.
And going back to the joke that you said, hey, we're going to end up talking about AI. Well, guess what? Like, nobody understands AI.
That's right.
Man, I went to school to do robotics. I would think you would think like I'm qualified to speak. That terrifies me. It's like nothing like what I learned, like the machine learning that I learned, the language models that I learned have nothing to do with all that stuff today. But guess what? We're all experts all of a sudden, right? Within the last year or so, where it literally your toaster comes with AI. Uh, People expect us to be the SMEs for all this stuff.
Yep.
Oh, you're in IT, you must know AI. And you have the dudes, the scientists that are working on this. Those guys are saying, I have no idea how this works, right?
It's right.
So yeah, talk about confidence. That this is the world that we live in. It's like something new comes around the corner, and all of a sudden we're supposed to know what it does and how to implement it, and what explain to you the ROI of this and that. No, man, we're figuring it out as we go. So
So
there's
how do
your
you do
magic.
that? So how do
Mhm.
you, and I think that's the like getting right down to the heart of it. How do you, is it just a matter of normalizing and saying, hey, look, there is so much going on. There's literally just new technology every minute that's growing in so many different areas in so many ways. It is impossible for you to be the subject matter expert on everything in IT,
Mhm.
because nobody can. It's impossible. So is it just a matter of communicating to the other people in IT that, hey, look, we cannot, you can't, I can't, nobody can be the subject matter expert on all of it. You rewind 30, 40 years, 30 years ago, we could be, Like you could be really, really smart in pretty much all of it. You could be a real Renaissance man who knew
Yeah.
pretty much all of it. You were really good. You're good with building the computers. You put it together. You can program it. You can do like I was killing it back then. It was like, oh, I knew everything. Now like 1% of 1% of the stuff. I mean, that's not, that's an exaggeration, but there's just so much now. And so you have to
Mhm.
really be working hard to stay on top of the big topics, the ideas, and then get a grip on that. And so how do you what is your approach now? I'm getting to a question after all that. What is your approach to helping people, under you in your new dream team? What is the message you want them to kind of take to heart in that? How do you convey that in a way that they're like, okay, cool, I don't have to be the expert in all things IT, and you won't think I'm stupid because I don't know everything.
Well, so that's a good question. That's a really good question, and it's a question that I think the ones of us who spend some time thinking about it, the answer is going to be different for everybody. Okay, and I think a good way of looking at it, speaking like I want to go back to that little quote that I gave you. I think it's a matter of resolution when you're thinking about. I understand 1% of 1% of 1% of what I'm doing. Roll back not that long ago, man. Middle Ages. You lived in a village that was your world. You were the blacksmith, but you had a good idea how the farmer did his thing, and you had a good idea how the dude who raised the pigs did his thing, and you had a general idea of how your landlord, your manor lord, or whatever, did his thing. So you were not that very far removed from everything that you did, right? So what does that give you? Familiarity. What does that give you? Confidence. Okay, so I'm gonna be harping this confidence thing the whole time.
Love it.
Um, so going back to it, it's like for me, that has been one of the biggest challenges of my career is to gain that confidence and to inspire others to gain that too. And um, the answer for me has been passion. I think I'm a very passionate person in every sense of the word. And um, I like asking why. I like being curious. And to me, the answer has been like, I want to know how this works. So whenever I was in one of these oh shit moments and I clicked the button and it worked, I know there's so many guys that are like, oh shit, it worked. I'm not going to touch it anymore. Like back off slowly and let it. No, I wanted to know why did it
Right.
work now?
That's right.
Right. So, to try to answer your question, find what people like to do. And so like one of the guys that in my new team, um my first questions are all about him. It's like what does he want? Where's his heart? What does he want to learn? And I think in my opinion, my experience was the people who offered me trust, I felt compelled to give them back my loyalty. The people who wanted to help me, I felt like helping back. I felt like doing the extra mile. Um, and we're all different. Just so many people say, "Oh, I'm a people person. I'm a people person." Are you really though? It's like, are you really able to put yourself in another person's shoes and be fully objective about any given situation? And I don't think we are. Um, I've been lucky that I've encountered very very many people from many cultures. And that's what I know for sure is that everybody's different. So ask that question to 100 people, you're probably going to get 100 different answers. Um, be passionate, like help someone find their passion. If you want to inspire someone, like a lot of people never ask themselves that question. Go back to the doing a job, you know. I think one of the hugest, like biggest cultural differences coming from Europe over to the US has been that is like so many like incredibly smart and talented people, they feel like they don't deserve better and they get stuck and they get taken advantage of and they feel like they don't deserve any better. So all that talent goes to waste, all that passion goes to waste. And I don't know, it's so interesting because everywhere you look, it's gonna be a different version of the same story.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, like going back to that cultural difference,
Mhm.
why do you think you've met so many people in the US who don't feel their, whatever it is, right?
Um, that's a good question, and it's hard for me to give you a straight answer because I can only give you my version of it.
Of course.
Um, um, like I said, I think like the first half of my career, I was fueled by the fear of failure. Like I didn't want to fail. And this was in Germany. And Germans are very, very, very keen on protecting their craftsmanship, protecting their tools, and they're very respectful for what you do. So it doesn't matter how you make your money. It doesn't matter if you're a roofer or you collect garbage or you're a doctor. It's like everybody respects what you do um, at any level, or at least for most people. And so you have the chimney sweepers. They're hundreds of years old tradition of sweeping chimneys. They have pride. They take pride in what they do. Germans take a lot of pride in what they do, which makes them good engineers. It's like they're focused on perfection, they're focused on detail, and they drive that confidence from being meticulous. Okay, so if I can make that transposition and make a direct comparison, I think the North American and particularly the US culture is let's do it the Nike method. It's more agile, more like fail fast is
Mm-hmm.
what most people go after. But then when you put it in the world where you're not allowed to fail, how are you supposed to fail fast?
Well, even if you are failing fast, even if you
Mhm.
are in that place, I think you hit on something that's really important, and it is the taking pride in your work. I don't think that has anything to do necessarily with perfection so much as a social norm in at least in Germany, that isn't so much here in the US, right? There are so many, it's just not a norm, and I think it's unfortunate, and I think it needs to be talked about more, that you should take pride in your work. Like I spent, when I was in the army, I was in Tokyo for 3 years. I was stationed there, and it's a similar experience. They take great pride in their job and their service that they're providing. It's an honorable thing. So this honor
Mhm.
and pride, it's a huge part of the culture, and it is evident when you walk into a store. You are greeted by every employee. They greet you when you walk in. They are happy to provide the service. And
Mhm.
when it came back to the States, I was just it was shocking how people, you would go to I remember going to the first time I went to a fast food restaurant in the States after being in Japan. I could not believe how the the people in this restaurant, felt like this job was beneath them. It was just all over them. It was how they were
Yeah.
communicating. It was all about, like, I'm just doing this because I need the money. But this is, just, there was no pride in their work. They weren't not proud that they were there providing a great service and doing a great. That was the exact opposite, and it was shocking. And I don't think that has anything to do with failing fast, pushing for success, or or anything other than it's a sad cultural norm that should be changed. We do so many great things, it's so much great technology, so many great innovations, so many great products and services come out of the United States. Worldwide, we're a leader in it, and yet it's done in spite of the fact that so many people do not take pride in their work. Obviously,
Yes.
some people do,
Yeah.
but the majority of them don't. And maybe
Yeah.
it is the Steve Jobses and the Gates and so many of these kind of like atlases who are holding up the whole thing, kind of doing it, and everybody else around them, fine, they're helping hold up the globe on his back. and maybe that's it, but it's a sad state of affairs, that people aren't proud of the job they're doing. I don't care if it's chimney sweep, if it's factory worker. They should be taking pride in that. They should be proud of the
Absolutely.
fact that I'm making this great product or providing this service. And I think that's the sad reality of it.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And if you look at it from that lens, right, it just exacerbated it accentuates what I'm trying to say. It's like, how do you build confidence in that world, right? It's
Yeah.
if you're naturally introverted. I'm so weird because I like both. Like you can this is my man cave here. You can lock me here for a week as long as I have food, internet. I'm fine, man. I don't have to talk to anybody. But I'm also the kind of guy that, hey, I want to go party. I want to meet people. I want to talk to people. I want to do this. So it's super weird. But I've been in those challenges. I've been in those shoes, and going back to like knowing your value.
Yeah.
What? How do you know that? Like, what's your value? And one very smart person made this comparison, which is brutal, but it is so true. It's like your salary is how much you define that every minute of your life is worth.
Yeah.
Take a second to let that
That's
sink in, you
brutal.
know? So um I think that the natural human being, and this is like across most cultures, we like to be comfortable. And I think it's very easy when you have reach a space of comfort. Just the idea of leaving that space gives you anxiety. Now think about a job, right? You have a job, you're paying your bills, you're not rich, but you can you have you're doing okay. Sometimes you're struggling, but you can make ends meet. It doesn't matter, but it's very easy to get comfortable. Let's be honest. In tech, the salaries in tech, it's a very lucrative industry. It doesn't take a whole lot to make a lot of money. This is one of the few industries left that you can have all these people that have no formal training, but they're fantastic at what they do. There is a lot of opportunity there.
Yep.
So, um, being in this space, and not asking yourself the question, "What's my value? What do I bring to the company?" And going back to what you said, I think a huge cultural difference is a lot of people don't ask themselves that question, and they feel lucky that they landed a job. The job market is brutal. Like I see so many people. I was one of them too when I was looking for a different job, just like getting everything that you have to go through to from your resume and asking the people about recommendations. It's super anxiety inducing. And then going through all these interviews to finally like secure a job that you're lucky for, and then you get stuck there. And if you don't have good leadership that's going to recognize talent, try to foster it, man, like that's tough. And it's tough to grow. Um, Everything that we do is so weird. It's inherently so weird because it's so quickly. Like everything happens so
Yeah.
quickly and so fast that it's if you take the average IT guy, it's so easy to see why we all get stuck at some point in our careers because it's a lot less terrifying. It's a lot less scary than putting yourself out there and asking those difficult questions like, is this the right place for me? Is this the right boss for me? Is this the right company for me? Is this the right salary for me? Or the even harder question, is this even what I want to do? You know?
Well, I think you hit on something that, that combination of taking pride in your work. And I think that's where the confidence comes from ultimately. Because you're proud of what you're doing, you will build that confidence, and it won't come on the backs of the fear of not being perfect. It's built out of the pride of the good job that you've done. When it's, and I don't care if it's just a frontline IT support where you're helping solve somebody's problem, and you fix the problem. I think, those small victories should be celebrated, right? When
Yeah.
you do that little thing, yay, I fixed the
Yeah.
Outlook opens now. Yay.
Yeah.
Yay, fucking celebrate it. That's
Yeah.
great. Get up, dance, put on a little music, whatever. Just at least be happy for a minute instead of like, oh,
Hmm.
close the ticket, moving on. Okay, sure. But you don't have to be mechanical about it. And you should celebrate those because you solved the problem. And in IT, we're always solving problems, making things better, no matter what. So there's always an opportunity to be celebrating and taking and being a little happy and building that pride in what you're doing. And if you combine that with a mission and you're doing that and you're taking pride in your work, and now what's not to be confident about, right? I think those things that they build, like we're fighting the good fight. We're keeping this company afloat, which even if you do nothing else, even if your company does not have some great mission, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, that company is providing a way of life for everybody who works there. And if you can do that and create a culture that is happy, that is good and healthy, now the 8 hours a day that everybody's there is better because you kept the IT lights on for them and you
Yeah.
kept it running smoothly. And when you did a good job making them feel good about it. And so that just made everybody's day better because we all know how your day can go to complete shit the second there's a tech problem and if it's not handled well, right?
Yeah.
And so just doing that is a great thing, right? And now you've made that everything better. So going back to the mission, like even if you're whatever it is, you're creating those jobs where people can have a great life and during the day, and then they go home and they've let whether they're working remotely or they're working in the office. Now when they go to their families, they're happier, they feel good, they feel pride in their work during the day. Their life is better. I mean, we live in this crazy world where you can push a button and minutes later food shows up. Like, are you kidding me? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
insane, right?
Yeah.
We live in this world where we're hundreds of miles apart and we're talking in real time, and seeing each other. It's crazy stuff. And we live in a world now where you can ask, you can just speak, and the answer is out of like magic. You get the answers, like the gods have parted the heavens, and they give you the answer. It's ridiculous. We live like gods, and for anybody to be like anything other than really freaking happy. Now, I'm not, I'm not saying that there's obviously mental health and physical things, but all that aside, the normal person who, especially in the United States, we have such an incredible, standard of living now. Even our even the most poor people in this country live like kings, from 100 years ago. No, you can push a button, boop, and get out of here. Crazy. It's just crazy. So anyway,
Yeah,
but
but I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. It's
please,
just I want to keep the flow because you said something that I want to continue this conversation on because perfectly wait for this. So you phrase it as a question. It's like, hey, how can you not be proud of what you do if you just look at the impact what you have has? Okay, so let me ask you this: how do you take pride in what you do if other people take credit for your work and you don't have the confidence to take that credit yourself? Because what you said is so key. It's like, do you celebrate your wins? And a lot of us don't, man. We just don't because we're ashamed of it, because we're afraid that someone's going to be like, why did you do it this way, not this way? It's like, hey, why did it take you 10 hours to solve it instead of two, So a lot of us are just happy, like I said, with, oh shit, it works. Let's not tell anybody. And let's not hope that someone thinks that this, screwed up. So let me ask you that question. It's like, how do you do that? If you just did magic and your boss goes to his boss and brags about how great is what he did.
mm-hmm. So there's a couple of things. So, Napoleon, once said that he could, with enough ribbon, he could rule the world, right? Because he understood that it was just a matter of giving people credit. People just wanted credit for what they were doing. They just wanted to be rewarded for their deeds. And a ribbon is worthless. It makes it costs nothing to put a ribbon on somebody's chest. And so it's really interesting, this idea of credit and whatnot. But I think that is I think that for the masses, he's right. When you're talking about moving the masses, it's a great way to, but I think that when you're talking specifically, and I want to now groom somebody to be a happy in their job, be successful, promoted. The interesting thing is that I would say that you should always be working for everybody has a boss. Even if you were the CEO, the boss is the customer, the boss is the board of directors, and then they're the shareholders. So everybody has a boss. So the perspective is not, you want to make your boss look good. So I know this is weird, but the idea is the other thing is everybody's going to see you for you and them for them. That's the way the world works. So when people are like, "Oh, but I can't let them go around," of course you can. You don't even have to. You don't even have to like worry about it because everybody sees you for you and them for them. So if you're making now, let's say that in IT, you're kind of your boss is taking credit for stuff, and nobody else gets to know that you're the one making all the magic happen. Okay. Totally fine. You make your boss look good. You're doing a great job. In all those moments where you're interfacing with other people, I tell you what, when a boss is doing that, it's obviously a sign of weak leadership because a good leader shows, builds up their support, and they're like, oh, it's not me. I have the best fucking team on the planet. They are rock stars. I am lucky to get to be their boss. A leader like that, everybody's happy for. Now, let's say that you have this leader who's so fragile. Their ego is so fragile that they're taking credit for everybody's work, and they're going to the boss. This weaselly little shit's going to the boss, to the boss and be like, "Look what I did! I did all this stuff. I'm awesome." Think that boss doesn't know for 1 second that he's a Weasley piece of shit? Of course he does. He's like, "You weasel! I know you're like, I only keep you around because everything's working in your team. But the second something happens, that guy's gone, right? Or that guy, whatever it is, that boss is no longer going to be there." So my advice to somebody in that position is everybody sees them for them and they see you for you. Don't worry. Take pride in your work. Enjoy what you're doing. Keep up the great work because it will be seen, even if not for your boss, because they're not the only ones involved. Your coworkers are as well. People talk, the world, it gets out there. Your good deeds will be seen. So don't necessarily just like run to another company or just start. Make your boss look like a freaking rock star. Do the best job. Make him look spectacular, and your time will come. And if nothing else, you won't feel bad that they're taking credit for your work. You're going to feel good that you're kicking ass and making them look good. And ultimately, it's going to pay out. Because what are you going to do if you're in a position where you got your boss has got to die before you get promoted? You're certainly not going to do that by you're not going to get them out of your way. They either get promoted because you made them look so good, they get promoted to a position where they're now they're super not qualified and they get fired. Now you've got their next, you not only did you get their job, now you're the boss, but you get their next job too, because you got them promoted beyond their ability to be competent anymore. Right. So that's my advice to that. That's my advice.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Matthew, I couldn't agree more with what you just said, but I want to give it a small spin to that, because I think for me, and I'm speaking for myself, I think one of the good choices that I've made was that I've been careful. Who do I want to work with, and do I want to work for? And so I'm gonna guess, if we're at the point that we're giving advice, right? So I'm gonna take what you said and give it the following spin. Is like, if I take pride in what I do, making my boss look good is gonna be a natural fallout from that. I wouldn't necessarily put effort into let me make him look good. I want to put effort into doing a good job, because that's something that's the distance between what I did and me being able to draw success from that and use it to fuel my confidence, right? It's much shorter. So that's my first bit of advice that I would give. It's like, learn to celebrate yourself. Be accountable to yourself. And then let's jump right into leadership, right? Why the heck are you following a guy that takes credit for your accomplishments? And that's the second bit of advice that I can give everybody. Like, look at the guy that is your boss and ask yourself, do you want to be like him? If the answer is yes, then by all means, keep listening and keep learning. If the answer is no, get the heck out of there. Go to a place that they're gonna value you. And man, that could not be more true. It's like sometimes you are just at the wrong spot and you feel too comfortable because you're in that little nook that you're getting your paycheck. And oh, people don't bother you that much and you're not that miserable. So I'm just gonna stay here because it's comfy. Don't do that, dude. Go back to what I just said earlier. It's like your salary, if you want to measure success by the amount of money that capitalism, yay, okay, how much money are you making? Now, is it worth it? You know, and ask yourself that question: is that where you want to be? So, the next bit of advice: how do you know a good leader? You know, this is a great question to ask in an interview. And man, I'm gonna be very careful. Don't do this at home, kids, because it's a super risky question. Everybody that I've interviewed before in my life in the past 10 plus years or interviewed with, I've asked them the question. The guy that I'm going to work for is like, hey, what's it going to take for me to take your job? And are you going to help me do that? And how can I help you reach your next step in your career? That takes balls to ask that question. And I cannot tell you how many people asked me from an interview because I asked that question. And it's a difficult question to ask for so many reasons because it took a lot of effort and hard work and blood and sweat and tears to put myself in a position where I can have the luxury of asking this question. That shouldn't be a luxury. That should be, man, like this is your job. This is what you do. This is your life. Ask that question. I think that's one of the few super, super key things that you can ask to a telltale sign. Is that going to be a good leader?
100%. I couldn't agree more. And honestly, life is too short to work for bad people.
Yeah.
So, you're right. The first advice is get out of there. Like, what are you still doing there? And if you can't, for whatever reason, it's like, it's the only one in the area and whatever. And this is where my family, fine. Then how do you deal with it? That's how you deal with it. But you're right. First is get out of there. Why would you work for somebody that you don't love working for who isn't a good leader?
Yeah. Yeah.
You 100% agree. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of this too. Like I've so many times in my life, in my career, I've gotten stuck at a place that I don't want to be anymore. And I've tried to be conscious about this one thing. One of the things that I've told myself is like the day that I wake up and I don't want to do my job is the day that I know I need to move on. I selected this career for a reason. I like computers. I like tech. I like this stuff. I want to be happy. Um, and I think so many people are too busy just, like I said, trying to survive in this industry. And they don't ask themselves the question, like, why do you do this? What are you getting at? Like, at what stage of your life are you? What's your next goal? Where do you want to be? And I think if we're it looks like we're at the stage of giving advice, right? And to everybody listening, like, again, this is what worked for me. I don't know what's going to work for you, but I can give you some ideas and hopefully you can draw some of these, right? A big question that you should ask yourself is like, where do I want to be? What do I want next? And then go backwards. So, treat it like a project. So if you want to get there, how do you get there? And the next super, super, and if not the most important question that you should ask yourself is like, who's going to help me get there? And another huge bit of advice, man, and this is where my confidence played against me. At a point in my career where I took pride on being the smartest guy in the room. There's a great book, by the way, that everybody should read in this industry, the smartest person in the room. And that was what held me back. And I guess I hid in that. I wanted to be the nerdiest dude in the room. I wanted to know that that thing I wanted to be as a SME, and that thing I wanted to make everybody else look bad. And no, man, like I spent so much time wasting energy, wasting cycles, trying to be better by myself instead of asking that question, being humble enough to ask the question, hey, that dude is kind of smart. Can I help? Can I ask him for help? So next bit of advice, like look for mentorship, man. Like the biggest cheat code in life. I know that a lot of us are nerds and geeks and gamers. Like if you got frustrated with one game at one point, you wanted to cheat code, up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right.
That's a AB, AB.
Yeah. I think the biggest cheat code in life that I found in my career is being humble enough to ask for help, and you would be surprised how many people out there find true joy in helping others. I want to be one of those, definitely. That makes me happy. Helping other people, that makes me super happy. There's a couple of guys that I've met throughout my career that I cannot explain to you how good it feels like that at some point I've given them advice. Many of them come often for advice, and I'm just like, I'm not that big of a deal. I'm just figuring stuff out, just like all of you guys are.
Everybody else, yeah.
Right? So ask that question, like, can you mentor me? Like, hey, it could be anything. It doesn't matter if it's a bakery or if it's the CEO of a company. Go talk to him. Every job, these CEOs or whatever executive, your director, whatever, said, hey, I have an open door policy. Come talk to him. Go do that. Put time on the calendar. Go talk to the guy. See if he has stuff that you want to learn from, and have the humility of saying, I don't know everything, but this guy knows this one thing that I can learn from. Yep. So find the right people to follow, and don't be afraid of asking for help, to ask for help.
That's great advice. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. I mean, those are the takeaways. That's it, folks.
Yeah.
I love it.
The in going back to this whole thing is like, I asked one of my mentors, super smart guy too. I asked him this question wildly because this is another cultural thing that I've learned. I went from South America, which is super wild, Wild West kind of thing is like we do everything at the last second. As long as it works, everything is fine, Like if you get to an appointment, you're 3 hours late, nobody cares, I went from that culture to a culture, if you're a minute late, you're late. If you're not 2 minutes early, you're late.
That's right.
And everything is planned. 80% of everything that you do needs to be planned and executed to perfection. And then I come here in the US, which is like a weird middle ground. So, yeah, finding what works for you and finding the people that can help you has been super, super key to my success, which is being happy. So I asked one of these smart guys that I was following. He's like, "Hey, what do you do?" And he went on. He gave me his spiel. It's like, "Oh, I've been like preparing this," and he gives me his elevator pitch of what he does, and he goes something about like, "I build dynamic teams to overcome the IT challenges of today." Blah 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 blah. So he told me his job. He gave me his job description, but that's not what you do. What you do is like you go out with your kids, you go hiking, you go fishing, you go like that's why you work. Yeah. So going back to this was another one of my oh wow moments. One of my early mentors in Germany, a professor at the University of Bielefeld. One day he saw me, and I was pretty depressed, I guess is the right word, because I was in a pivotal moment in my career that I was fed up with Germany. I needed change. And he asked me what was wrong with me, because I'm usually a super upbeat guy. And he asked me like, "Hey, Maximo, like, what's wrong with you? Why do you have a heavy heart?" And I told him, "I don't know, man. It's like I have a good job. I'm doing what I like. I have people that I care about, but I don't know what it is." And I promise I'm going full circle. I'm going way around, but yep. I'm going to tie a knot on it.
I see it coming.
Yeah. So he said, "I think that I don't know what's wrong with you, but I think I have an idea. And he said, you come from South America where people work to live. And now you're in Europe, in a country where people live to work. And it's wild saying that, right? Because in most European countries, people really value their free time. But man, it was true. I was killing myself working. I was working, I don't know, like 80, 90, 100 hours a week doing what I loved, but it was just grinding on me in a way that I didn't want to do it anymore. So I asked myself that question the first time. It's like, what do I want to do? What do I do this for? And back then the answer was like, I wanted a family. You know? And this is going back to the goals. It's like, okay, I want to do that. I'm going to go after this. And this is not career, but it's life. But I don't think your career is any different. If you set a goal and you start aligning your effort towards that goal and you focus on that goal and you keep trying, you can't fail. And if you keep trying and you win and you celebrate that win, that's going to give you a little bit of confidence. Find people who are going to fuel that confidence, who are going to recognize that, and who are going to give you the tools that you need to succeed. Ask for help. And if it doesn't work for you, get out, and start asking the question. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think the most vulnerable thing and the most beautiful thing about human beings is that at the end of the day, most of us want to help each other. So don't be stupid. You're not the king. You're not the smartest guy in the room. And don't be afraid to admit that to yourself. Celebrate your wins. Learn from your mistakes. And try to find what makes me happy. Try to find the people who are going to support that idea. And if you manage to find a place where you can do your job and accomplish both your professional and personal goals, then that's a good step towards being happy, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, that is perfectly well said. You've wrapped up the whole thing in a nice little bow. I think that's as good as it gets. There we go. We have our happy, perfect ending there. That is fantastic. Maximo, this has been fantastic. You brought it to a nice conclusion for us. Wrapped it all up in a pretty bow. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and Longship?
Sure, absolutely. So you can look us up, longship.us. You can find me on LinkedIn, Maximo Bredfeldt, as an M Bredfeldt, I think is my login. Happy to connect if anything that I said here either aggravated or resonated with you. And if there's anything that I can do to help any of you, like, please shoot me a message. I'm a down-to-earth guy. It would make me so happy to just hear that one person, like, hey, this one thing that you said, it really marked me. So yeah, that's the only thing that I want to say is, like, if this helped you, pass it on, and encourage them to learn, to keep learning, to not give up, and to find the right people.
Perfect. Well said. All right. Well, thank you. And until next time.
Hey, Matthew, thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful. I had a lot of fun. It was crazy how fast time flew.
It just flies. It was spectacular.
Yeah. So yeah, looking forward to this. And if there's anything I can do for you, hit me up.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.